Have you heard about the Google Play Pass? Not sponsored, by the way. It's a subscription that lets you play any game you want from the Play Pass catalog without having to buy each game individually and with no ads. You know, like every other subscription out there. They claim to have over 1,000 games to choose from, which at first I thought would be a bunch of random titles, but they have some pretty good stuff here. So here are 10 games that I tried on the Google Play Pass. I'll be going over what the games are about, whether or not I think you'd be the kind of player that enjoys these games, if you should get them on mobile using the pass, as well as overall thoughts for each one. Let's start with the first one that caught my eye. Stardew Valley. Who hasn't played Stardew Valley? To date, there have been more than 30 million copies sold, so there's a good chance that you already know what the game is about. In Stardew Valley, you play as an office worker who's tired of city life and decides to move to the farm you inherited from your grandfather to be one with nature and escape the rat race. When you first arrive, everything is a mess, and you get to work cleaning the place up, planting your first crops, and slowly get introduced to the other mechanics like fishing and raising animals. You'll often find yourself at the nearby town to visit shops and interact with the NPCs, who all kind of have their own thing going on, and you can befriend them later. Basically, day to day you'll want to earn gold by selling stuff, and then put that gold into advancing your farm further. Rinse and repeat, as the seasons change, until you're happy with everything. Or you want to start a new game with a different type of farm, and it's just kind of endless, you know, you can keep going, you do you. The tricky thing about games is that everyone has different preferences, so even a popular game like Stardew Valley will have its fans and haters. I can only speak to the type of player that I think will enjoy the game. I think Stardew Valley would be most enjoyed by people who like freedom and self-direction with their games. In Stardew Valley, you're not told what to do all the time, or directly told the optimal way to play. For example, as soon as I'd planted and harvested the seeds that they gave me in the tutorial, I went to the shop to find something to plant next, and there were so many options. After reading all the descriptions, I chose to plant potatoes and tulips because... vibes, I guess? For some people, this freedom is the joy of the game, but I know that other people like the feeling of completing specific tasks in their specific order, which isn't really what Stardew Valley will give you. So if you're the kind of person who's usually hung up on finding the best way to play, instead of letting yourself explore and enjoy, you might find that Stardew Valley is a bit boring or confusing for your taste. Another thing about the game is that even though there is some story and you can talk to the NPCs, it wasn't as present as I thought it would be. I've seen fan animations on YouTube of Stardew Valley characters, so I came in with the impression that I'd come into the game and instantly fall in love. But at the beginning of the game, most of the NPCs give you one-liners, so I couldn't get much sense of their personality. That being said, I haven't gotten far into the game, and I know relationship building becomes important down the line, so maybe I just haven't experienced it yet, but I was quite surprised that it didn't pull me in as I'd expected. The world itself is pretty cool though. Each NPC has their own look and feel, and their homes or place of work all give you a sense of who they are. There was definitely love put into the art and the design of everything, and I wouldn't be surprised if there were Easter eggs of lore here and there if you look for them. Lastly, the game isn't really demanding, but it does still need your attention. It's no surprise that a farming simulator like Stardew Valley isn't the most action-packed game out there, though later on you will be running into some monsters in the caves. But all in all, the game should be pretty slow-paced in a relaxing way. Keep in mind though, unlike some of the casual simulation games on mobile, you will need to put your attention into playing the game. There is a day and night cycle, and you can only do certain things at certain times. For example, I was playing and had to step away for a bit, and when I came back, it was already too late and the shops were closed, so I had to wait for the next day. When I woke up, I went straight back to town and whoops, the shops weren't open yet. It was too early. You won't really be punished for it, but it does help to plan how you want to spend your in-game days, which can be really thrown off if you keep putting down the game. Personally, I think the game ported over okay to mobile, though I imagine it would feel better to play on a Nintendo Switch or PC. You can zoom in and out, so you don't have to worry about anything being too small to see, but you might tap on the wrong thing from time to time, though it's usually nothing fatal. Moving between areas can get annoying though, like exiting a house. Since the door is at the edge of your screen, you'll need to tap the edge of your phone. It doesn't work like a joystick, but honestly it's not that big a deal if you want to play on a portable device and don't have any other platform that can do that. I think the bigger consideration is how long you'll be playing the game. Chances are if you like Stardew Valley, you're gonna want to play it for more than a month. So it doesn't make sense cost-wise to get it on Play Pass, unless you're juggling your Stardew Valley time between other Play Pass games. Overall, I'd recommend you try Stardew Valley if you have the Play Pass, especially if you haven't played similar games to see if you like it. I don't think I'm qualified to recommend it as a standalone purchase though, because I can't compare it to other games of the same genre that might be better, since I haven't looked into them myself. Keep in mind, this game came out in 2016, and since its explosion in popularity, a lot of other developers have made their take. Even the creator of Stardew Valley is working on another game called Haunted Chocolatier, set to release in 2026, so you have lots of options to choose from. I'm personally kind of interested in trying Fields of Mystria, which is in early access on Steam right now. Check out this video by Salomons if you're curious. His review is what got me interested. After briefly playing Stardew Valley, I can see myself pouring hours into this kind of game, so I can buy Fields of Mystria with some confidence that I'll enjoy it, which I wouldn't be able to say if I hadn't tried Stardew Valley first on Play Pass. Cat Museum is a point-and-click adventure game where you interact with your surroundings and solve puzzles to move forward. As you pass by objects, you have the option to interact with them, and will usually get 1 or 2 lines about what you're seeing, or an item you can take with you. There are checkpoints where you need to do something to move to the next area, using what you've seen so far or things you've collected in your backpack. The game has a grotesque aesthetic that I don't know how to describe other than Junji Ito. It's designed to unsettle you with both the visuals and the sound design, so definitely play with your volume up using headphones if you can. I usually shy away from games with horror elements, but this one had me feeling curious. What is this world? Why is it like this? And where are all the cute cats? As with most point-and-click adventure games, the selling point is in the story and the environment, which I think Cat Museum nails through the design of their puzzles. The puzzles themselves aren't too challenging, but they don't have to be. Unlike standalone puzzle games where the goal is to frustrate you and make you feel smart afterwards, the puzzles in Cat Museum are there to encourage you to interact with the interesting world around you. You can't move to the next level otherwise. Slight spoiler here, but in one of the areas, I legitimately walked by these hands and was like, ah, sweet. A severed hand with bony fingers, very off-putting. Excuse me as I walk on by and ignore these, only to reach a temporary dead end. When I turned back, I finally realized, oh, there are a lot of hands here. Perchance this has to do with the puzzle I need to solve to get to the next level. Maybe I'm just dumb or impatient, but the game makes sure that even I'm taking everything in, instead of treating the game like an unsettling walking simulator. Speaking of unsettling, as you can see from the gameplay footage, this is your sign to pass on this one if it makes you too uncomfortable. If you're off-put and not in the car crash I can't look away from kind of way, but in the I don't want to touch that, I think I'm gonna throw up and have bad dreams tonight kind of way, then maybe this isn't the game for you. There are other adventures that you can go on, so no shame if this isn't your cup of tea. The game plays really well on mobile, so it's definitely a good option if you want to play from the comfort of your couch or bed, maybe in the dark for extra creepy vibes. You could also get it on Steam and play on your computer if that's more to your taste. I'm not sure how much it would have cost without the Play Pass, since you can download the game without it. From there you can play the demo for free and purchase the full game inside the app. It's roughly $3 on Steam when I convert from my local currency, so maybe that's comparable. But since you'll probably finish the game in one weekend, play it once or twice at most, I'd say it's a good idea to get it as part of the Play Pass. All in all, this game honestly surprised me. In a sea of games to choose from on the App Store, Cat Museum is unique and well made. It's a strong recommendation from me for people who enjoy the Junji Ito aesthetic, though I'm a bit too squeamish for it myself. Shout out to the devs who drew themselves here. Thanks for making something really cool. I hope more and more people find this great game. Gris is a platform adventure game where you make your way through a beautiful but seemingly broken world. Through no words, you can tell that the player character has gone through a life-shattering experience and is presumably going on a journey to make sense of it and remedy it. At the point I've reached in the game, I don't know exactly what's happening yet, nor would I want to spoil it for you, but immediately I was pulled in by the visuals and the music. This is an absolutely gorgeous game. You start off the game walking, then running, and soon you're jumping to collect these glowing stars across the map. These stars will form constellations that allow you to move from one area to the next and progress in the game. I'm skipping ahead and talking about platform choice with somewhat of a disclaimer. As of writing this, I haven't made much progress into the game because it's way too small on my phone screen to play, much less enjoy. Even in the early stages, there are some areas where the game pans out to a wide shot, which looks beautiful, don't get me wrong, but it leaves the character standing less than half a centimeter tall on my physical screen, which is tiny. After just 20 minutes of playing the game, my eyes were burning from the squinting, so I decided to stop. I would opt to get the game somewhere else, not just because of the eye strain, but because it feels like a waste to play such a beautiful game that needs a big screen on a small one. If you don't have another platform where you can play the game, or are unable to purchase Gris outside of the Play Pass subscription, then by all means get it on mobile, but I suggest you get it on Steam. It goes on sale in my region quite often and comes out to under $2 US. I've put it on my wish list, so I'll be notified once it goes on sale again. Other players have also mentioned in their reviews that in the later stages there are some jumps that are hard to make without a controller, so that could also be something to consider. Since I haven't gotten far with the game, I can't comment extensively on if you'll enjoy it, but there is one thing I'd like to share. I think because I've previously been playing a lot of mobile games, I slowly built this idea in my head that games were a way of killing time. Something you'd want to do if your friend was 10 minutes late for your meetup, or while waiting for the bus. But Gris kinda slapped me in the face and reminded me that there are a ton of games out there that aren't meant to be played like that. Games like Gris are something you choose to spend your time on because you want to experience something. It's meant to tell a story and evoke feelings, and since it's not mechanically challenging, I think a lot of people can get to experience it. So, if you like that kind of thing, it doesn't sound too artsy for you, or even if it does, I think there's a good chance that you'll get something out of playing Gris, whether or not adventure platformer is your usual genre of choice. Maybe I'll share more thoughts once I've gotten to play more of the game myself. Let's liven things up with this next one. Monster Hunter Stories is a role-playing adventure game which spins off from the main Monster Hunter franchise in some ways. Unlike in other installments, you can actually create your own team of monsters here and fight alongside them. Instead of the usual fighting system where your character is in the thick of the action, timing your hits and dodges, combat in Monster Hunter Stories is turn-based, which is honestly for the best given it's a mobile game. There's a main quest line for you to follow, which will advance the story through dialogue and cutscenes, as well as side quests that encourage you to go out and gain more power by leveling up your party and upgrading your equipment. If you're a fan of Monster Hunter World, you'll be seeing some familiar faces, which as someone who played both Monster Hunter World and Rise, I was quite happy to see. So far from what I've played through, the game has a decent story. It starts you off alongside two of your friends as you explore the forest in search of monster eggs. In this world, you can bond with monsters that hatch from these eggs, so you seek them out as the three of you aspire to become riders, people who raise and fight alongside monsters for a living. As you would expect, things don't go smoothly, and there are challenges you and your friends have to overcome along the way, like a monster attacking your village and supposedly killing your friend's mom, which potentially sets him off on a villain arc. You know, the usual stuff. The plot itself hasn't blown my mind, but the characters, the design of the village, the music, brought me into the world just enough for me to be open to what happens next. Which in my opinion is what a good RPG should do. But I wouldn't argue with anyone who says it isn't peak writing. And I don't know if it'll nosedive in the middle or the end. But other reviewers don't seem to be complaining, so the bar is still at a respectable height. The game does have quite a long list of mechanics that you'll need to learn. But they're simple and it's pretty worthwhile, given that other players say it took them roughly 40 hours to complete the main objectives. If you've played the other Monster Hunter games, you should have no issue here. Arguably, things are simpler, but if you haven't, you should probably come in with the expectation that outside of combat, there's a lot of other stuff you need to get familiar with. Even 1 hour into the game, I was still getting tutorials on new stuff. On their own, the mechanics themselves aren't too hard to understand, and you have your trusty notes to refer to for anything you might have missed or forgotten. But it might be a turnoff for some people who don't want to deal with all of that. though I think the game does do a good job of teaching you. I really like that when it's referring to something, they usually provide a visualization like a screenshot of what it looks like in the game, so you know what the instructions are trying to say with less words. Though some of the cutscenes in the beginning are fancy, at some point you stop being able to see the strands of hair, and we get to the style you see in the gameplay footage. It's honestly for the best, because I think if the graphics were any more realistic, my phone would spontaneously combust. But I do get that some people enjoy more realistic graphics, because it helps them immerse themselves in their RPGs. If you've played Monster Hunter World though, I think you'll find how the graphics translated an extra layer of funny. Just look at these comparisons. Even though the style is simpler, you can still customize your player character in a meaningful way, and I found some of the options to be really cute. I like how derpy my character turned out and seeing them in action in the cutscenes. The style has its charms. This is the game that I felt gave me the most value for money on Play Pass by far, as it's roughly $30 on Steam and $20 on Google Play without the pass. But I'm honestly struggling to give it a wholehearted recommendation on mobile. The movement, combat, and UI all ported over nicely. It doesn't feel clunky and everything is decently sized. My phone gets a little warm after an hour of playing, but nothing too noticeable, though it might be a concern depending on what device you have. But one issue I ran into were noticeable audio problems. Sometimes the background music would get choppy, I think when another audio was trying to play at the same time, like a character speaking during dialogue interactions. It's almost as if the background music would play between the words instead of alongside them, like they were on the same layer. I feel like I can look past it, and I might experiment with the sound settings to turn the background music off, or the dialogue audio. The characters are speaking gibberish anyway. But I do wish the devs would fix this, as I think the music adds to the experience in a meaningful way with these kind of games. Other reviewers have also said that they encountered issues with the autosave feature, which the game says that they have. But some reviewers shared that they lost significant progress when their game closed unexpectedly, be it a crash or when they got a phone call midway through a session. I personally haven't run into this, but I can imagine that would be annoying. Overall, I think Monster Hunter Stories is an enjoyable game, and you should get it with the Play Pass on mobile if you can accept its imperfections. Personally, I'm not the kind of person that's comfortable spending $30 on a game I'm not in love with, so I don't see myself getting it on Steam. I'd rather keep playing on mobile using the Play Pass and put those $30 towards the upcoming game in the franchise, Monster Hunter Wilds, whenever that comes out. Cultist Simulator. The name of the game is not clickbait, it's exactly what it says it is. The goal of the game is to start your own cult and gain notoriety, build up your mystical prowess, influence, and wealth while avoiding the authorities. Even though it's classified as a simulation game on the Play Store, it's nothing like the simulation games I've played before, and in a way, feels more like a digital board game more than anything. On your board, you have cards, which are like nouns, such as items, places, and resources. You also have tiles, which are verbs, such as work, study, and explore. You are meant to use these cards and tiles together with each other. For example, if you have a bookshop card, you can use the Explore tile to visit that location. And from your visit, you could gain a book card to be studied later. Each of these takes a certain amount of time to complete, so you have to decide what you want to do and when, while you balance your other resources like health and funds. You'd think the main challenge would be building your cult and getting followers, but honestly, the hardest part is not dying. The aforementioned funds is a big problem because on top of supporting your day-to-day needs, you'll need some to perform certain actions. The solution would be to work, but working takes a toll on your health, and you could succumb to an illness. You could also die from plain old depression if you're not careful. Upon death, your run ends and you'll need to restart from a new life, but you'll slowly learn through your first attempts how things work and get to the cult leading part. There are apparently a ton of different endgame conditions, of which I've only experienced defeats. But there are minor, standard, and major victories you can accomplish if you manage to learn the ropes. The game has an eerie but beautiful aesthetic, and if you take the time to read the text, it shows that there's a lot of lore to dig up, which sold me further on the premise. If I had to describe the difficulty level of Cultist Simulator, I'd say easy to start, hard to master. Many of your initial runs will probably leave you feeling a little, if not a lot, confused. but I do think that the joy of the game is in learning and overcoming the challenge of it. If you were hoping to play a game where you could turn off your brain, look at the pretty cards, and enjoy the vibes and lore of building your own cult, that's valid, but you won't find that here. Perhaps you can watch some lore videos on Cultist Simulator instead. That being said, if learning a game with complex mechanics is your cup of tea, I recommend you start by trying your hand at a few runs to familiarize yourself with the gameplay, then watching a few guides which will help demystify how some of the mechanics actually work, like this one. Given how challenging the game is, I do think it would be useful if the game had a notebook with the cards, tiles, and deaths that you've seen to help catalog your learnings and spell out what you should be doing a bit more, which sadly they don't have at the moment. I also think a save point feature would be really helpful. I can imagine some people might have spent significant time on their board only to slip up on one step and that ending an otherwise good run. But maybe the masochism is part of the fun, I don't know. When I think of card games, I think of games like Solitaire, relaxing games that don't demand much in terms of reaction time. Cultist Simulator is not like that. Sure, you start the game with one tile, but pretty soon you've got 3, 5, 10, and you'll want to keep as many of them running at the same time, else you'll run out of the aforementioned funds, die of illness, succumb to your depression, or your cult simply won't grow. As you go along, you'll find some cards expire after a certain amount of time, and some of your cards have a cooldown time too, so time management on various moving parts is very important. That pause button in the corner will become your best friend, as it'll give you a break to make those important decisions. It's definitely an added challenge that even when you know how everything works, you'll still need your full attention to get everything moving how you want it to. I think if you've invested time into learning this game and are committed to getting the different victories, you'll probably still be playing it more than a month from now, so you should consider getting it outside of the Play Pass. You can get it for around $6 on Google Play or $7 on Steam, roughly converted for my region's pricing. The game plays really well on mobile. I didn't have any issues managing my board by tapping and dragging on the screen, and in my opinion, the text isn't too small. But if you're playing very seriously and want the extra layer of focus, then PC might give you an edge. That being said, if there are other games you're interested in from the Play Pass, I recommend you try Cultist Simulator using the pass first. The learning curve may be steeper than you think. You can also check out the guide I mentioned before so you can get a better idea of the level of complexity I'm trying to describe. In conclusion, starting your own cult is hard. It's not for the medium-sized brain people like me. If what I described to you sounds fun, go nuts. It's honestly a super interesting game, and I've personally never played anything like it. I do want to call out though, when I visited the Steam page, I saw that recent reviews were mixed, mostly because of controversy surrounding the developers and not about the gameplay itself. If you're mindful about the kind of people you give your money to, it might be worth checking out, though from my brief search, I haven't been able to make heads or tails of what really happened. Layton's Mystery Journey, Catriel and the Millionaire's Conspiracy is a puzzle adventure game which is part of the greater Professor Layton franchise. In this installment, you play as Catriel Layton, the daughter of the great Professor Layton, who, like most anime fathers, has gone missing. Though we are given a cutscene in the beginning that shows Catriel chasing after him, throughout the first case, I didn't get a sense that she was looking for him all too hard. Instead, Catriel has founded her own detective agency in London and is enlisted by various locals to help solve cases, including by a talking dog named Cheryl with the help of her assistant Ernest. The game is divided into cases, each with its own mystery to solve. To do so, you have to collect various clues, of which when you have them all, Catriel will piece everything together and you get to ride the story along to its conclusion. To collect these clues, you'll need to go around London, investigate the scene with your magnifying glass, talk to witnesses, and of course, solve puzzles. I have my criticisms for the game, which I was nervous about because I've heard great things about the Professor Layton franchise. So I looked at the reviews and quite a few people feel that this installment is lacking compared to other entries in the franchise. So don't let this put you off from the rest of the Professor Layton games. I really just picked this one at random from the App Store, among the other two that you can also get using the Play Pass. If thrilling, horrific, and serious are next to the word mystery in your vocabulary, this game does not deliver on that. If you couldn't tell from the talking dog or how the characters are drawn to look super adorable, which I get, sometimes games can surprise you and take a dark turn, the vibe here is much more relaxed, and if anything, the game tries to be comedic at times. If you're looking for something scary to play, I recommend the Zero Escape Trilogy, which you can find on Steam. I personally haven't played it myself because it was, well, too scary for me when I was in high school, but my sister has played through it and a lot of people have good things to say about it on Steam. So enjoy! I can only speak from my own experience playing the game, supported by some of the Play Store reviews I read too, but I felt that some of the puzzles in this game were frustrating. I had a few hypotheses on what was causing it, and I landed on the puzzles being more like riddles. With riddles, you have to arrive straight to a singular answer and then face either being right or wrong. You don't have the chance to interact with the puzzle, which helps you gain more information through playing with it and working through the problem, running into mini dead ends until you figure out how the puzzle works and crack the code yourself. Instead, you rely solely on the explanation given at the beginning of the riddle, and if you don't get it, you don't get it. You'll have to use your hints. You're given a ton of hint currency in the game naturally, so you won't get stuck. But if you were playing in hopes of feeling smart, I'm not sure that's what you'll be left feeling. Here's an example of what I mean. This is one of the early puzzles in the game. It wasn't frustrating per se, but it also wasn't really enjoyable. So the puzzle supposes you have a clock in front of you and asks, the clock is currently showing the time as 3:30 p.m. It would be nice if the hands of the clock would show midnight. What would be the minimum number of places you'd need to touch on the clock to show the desired time? To answer this question, you need to input a specific number, then the game will tell you if you're right or wrong. Perhaps you got the correct answer right away, but let's say for example you erroneously thought that the answer is 2, because you'll need to touch the long hand and the short hand of the clock. You enter that and the game tells you you're wrong. So now what? Well, you guess again. You need to just let the question ruminate in your head until you come to the conclusion the game wants you to. There's no other way to engage with the puzzle or feel like you're working on the problem. Now let's take a puzzle which I thought was more enjoyable. Here you have several pieces of paper which have been cut up with images on both sides. You need to put it back together by moving the pieces around and flipping them as needed. Riddle enjoyers might debate that this puzzle is more fun only because it's easier, which I wouldn't agree or disagree with. Instead, I think the puzzle is more enjoyable because you can work through the puzzle step by step, feel a sense of progress and encounter mini revelations when two pieces fit well together, which ones belong in the corners, while thinking about what exactly it is you're seeing. As you can see, I have thoughts when it comes to puzzle games. Perhaps I'll make another video specifically about puzzle games down the line. Surprisingly, there weren't as many puzzles as I thought there would be. It took me a little over an hour to finish the first case, which is great because that means the game has a lot of content for you to go through, but I think I only counted 7 puzzles during that time. More of the runtime went between cutscenes, exploration using the magnifying glass, and most of all, dialogue. I felt that some of it was a little unnecessary because it didn't add to the story or the characters in a meaningful way. For example, the banter between Cheryl and Ernest was a bit redundant at times. Cheryl would just be grumpy, start shouting, and the other characters would go, "Oh, Cheryl," and I guess we're supposed to find it endearing after the 5th time? Don't get me wrong, I love puzzle games that have a story, and the first case does try to trick you with some red herrings, which I found fun, but I'd prefer an intriguing story with a few puzzles, or a lukewarm story with more puzzles, instead of something that doesn't really commit to either. Unless you have a 3DS and want to get a physical copy of the game from Amazon for $68 US, mobile is your best bet. The port is kinda funny, since the 3DS comes with a top screen and a bottom screen, which most phones nowadays obviously don't have. The game resolves this by putting you in portrait mode and splitting your screen in half, and you'll need to flip over to landscape at times to watch the cutscenes. On top of that, the resolution still doesn't match up perfectly on my phone, so I still have a black bar filling up the space at the bottom. I personally don't mind, because I understand where the game came from and that it's not worth reconstructing the whole thing to fit the mobile format, but apparently Layton's Mystery Journey is also available on Nintendo Switch. You can get it from the digital store for $39.99, and from the screen grabs, it seems like they've adapted it just fine there. So I'm not sure if they could have found a way to make it work better on mobile, like committing to landscape like they did in the Switch version. Honestly though, for those prices, I'm happy to play what I have on my phone, flaws and all. Besides the visuals, the controls work well enough. The 3DS comes with a stylus, and you can tell when you try to use your magnifying glass to investigate the scene, that's what they were going for, since some of the objects you need to interact with are pretty small, but you'll be perfectly fine 98% of the time. If you're still interested in the adventure puzzle game that is the Layton franchise, I suggest you start with one of the other installments. I can't promise you that they'll be better because I haven't played them, but I don't think this installment will wow you. That being said, despite the issues I have with the game, I do plan on finishing it and trying the 2 other games that are also available through the Play Pass, given my aforementioned interest in puzzle games. Also, if you're just curious about the story, there's actually an anime adaptation you can watch, which from the reviews seem to tell the story better, while being a fun and lighthearted show. So I purposefully put this game, Stranger Case's Mystery Escape, next to Layton's Mystery Journey, because even though they are both puzzle games, they are extremely different, polar opposites in some ways. In Stranger Cases, to no surprise, you play as a detective who for some reason needs to go through different rooms to get to the top of this building to get a drone for this man. Unlike Layton's Mystery Journey, they don't really try with the story, and I could not tell you anything about the player character's personality. If Layton's Mystery Journey was 80% story and 20% puzzles, this game is 10% story and 90% puzzles. The aforementioned rooms are each one stage, and you need to complete them in chronological order to complete the game. Instead of wordy puzzles, this game plays more like an escape room, where you need to find objects in your surroundings, combine them to make tools, and maybe deal with some mini games here and there to get a much needed item or to turn something on. In that sense, it's kind of like Cat Museum, minus the world building and story. This game is really just about the puzzles. But I'm open to someone proving me wrong and revealing that there's actually lore. Given that the story is not so apparent, if you're the kind of player that needs a strong, overarching narrative to keep you intrigued, Mystery Escape probably isn't for you. While I was playing, I was enjoying myself solving the puzzles, but I didn't get a sense of there being clues of a great misdeed and dark secrets. Even though I was playing as a detective, I was fixing bathrooms. You're kind of working your way towards the next puzzle most of the time, not to the answer of a perplexing crime, which is honestly okay. The puzzles on their own were actually really engaging. Not to say the game doesn't have any personality. It is quirky with its visuals and solutions, and if you look closely, there are some fun little Easter eggs. In a single room, there are often multiple smaller puzzles you can work on at a time, with each having a varying level of difficulty. For example, there are some really simple ones, where you just have to drag the right object to perform the task. A no-brainer. But there are some tougher ones like this one here. You have to get the coin out by moving the surrounding pieces, with the limited wiggle room provided. It's solvable, but will take some time. So if you were thinking you'd breeze through the game quickly, you will run into these moments where you need to slow down, which from a design perspective is good. I'd hope if you're playing a puzzle game, you'd want some of the puzzles to challenge you. But of course, you wouldn't want all the puzzles to challenge you too much, because that would be exhausting, which Mystery Escape avoids with its variety. Now, if you do get stuck somewhere, you can ask the game for hints, or just make it outright solve parts of the room for you. If you get the game with the Play Pass, you'll have access to as many hints and solves as you want, so you never really have to worry about getting stuck, and you don't have to force yourself to play any of the puzzles you don't want to. Ironically, I do wish that the hint system was a bit more like Layton's Mystery Journey, which unfolds the solution bit by bit. As it is now, hints will basically bring you to whatever you should be solving without any further information as to how to solve them. Once you're looking at what you should be solving, if you're still confused, your only option is to go to the extreme and have the game solve it for you, which doesn't feel nice if you were hoping to get involved. Since this game is made for, and available exclusively on mobile, there isn't really a discussion on which platform you should play it on, so I'm skipping that section. Overall, I really like the game. It was challenging at some points, but not too challenging. The art is colorful and stylish, and the rooms have a lot of variety to them. Even though I felt that they could have done a little more with the story, it's honestly a small gripe considering the amount of content and entertainment you can get from the puzzles at the core of it. So if puzzle games are your cup of tea, I recommend you try it. It's not a mind-blowing experience, but you'll have a fun couple hours on a quiet afternoon. You can download the game for free without the pass, but there will be in-app purchases and ads inside. I'm not sure if the in-app purchases are just for hints, or if some of the further rooms are locked behind a paywall as well, but you can give it a try. Either way, on its own this won't really be the game that solves the mystery of whether or not you should get the Play Pass, but it's well made and worth a look. Next up is Game Dev Story. I'm honestly kind of afraid to talk about this game because for some reason I didn't like it very much, but it's received a lot of praise on the Google Play Store and on Steam. I wanted to love it because I'm exactly the kind of person who would want to simulate owning and growing a game development studio. But while people raved in the reviews about not being able to put it down, I put it down after 30 minutes of playing. The history of this game itself is a bit confusing. I saw that it was released in 2010 on the App Store, so I went in with the expectation of it being something that came from that time. But then I saw the Steam page, and it was added there in 2022. Reviews to date seem very positive, so I'm thinking, okay, people seem to like it by modern standards, but that's not unusual for a game, right? And then I saw this video by Wow It's Bao, and find out that this game was apparently created in the 1990s in Japan, and years after that got an international release. So now I'm double scared to share my opinion, because this game's apparently a classic and is so loved. But I guess you need to be willing to have some hot takes when you're recommending games with your own thoughts, and so we march forward. In Game Dev Story, you play as a programmer who has come into some money to start their own game development studio. You hire your first employees and immediately get to work on your first title. The process starts with selecting the genre of your game and what platform it will be developed for, along with tweaking the different aspects of the game, like how realistic or innovative it'll be. The goal is to come up with a good combination so that your game will sell well and earn your studio more money, and potentially win Game of the Year down the line. As soon as you've pitched your idea, development starts and you intermittently have to make some decisions. For example, you have to decide who will make the character designs, and you'll want to pick the employee with the best artistic stats. If you don't happen to have an employee with stats that you need on board, you can always outsource for an extra cost. There are also times when an employee will come up to you and be like, "Hey, I think I can improve the sound of the game. Will you let me try?" And you can let them go for it if you'd like, which will cost some resources and has a chance of failure. Eventually, your title will need to be debugged, and afterwards it will be ready to ship. Then the critic reviews will roll in as well as the sales. Then you're on to making your next game, with the benefit of some extra cash in your pocket, some experience with the genres you previously created, and a growing fan base. I think the main issue I had with Game Dev Story was that I didn't really know what it wanted from me. For my first game, I had chosen Adventure Ninja, two things that I thought were matching. When selecting the specs, I added points to cute for fun, because in my head I was like, cute ninja girls. I mean, there's always a market for cute characters, right? But then I got feedback that the combination was weird. Okay, so maybe a ninja game doesn't deserve to have any cuteness. For my next game, let's go by the books. How about an adventure historical game, with specs focused on being realistic and having some world building? But even then, when the critic reviews came in, one of them still said the genre combination was weird. I'm sure that there's a mechanism behind this that's calculating these outcomes, but it seemed like the only way for me to learn it was through trial and error. There was no observable rationale. Plus, with that being the case, I couldn't really make the kinds of games I wanted to, which I think would be the charm of a simulation game. But maybe the game is realistic that way. Sometimes studios gotta make what sells. But I'd like to think that, at least in a game, I could make the cool stuff I wanted. The most fun I had with the game was being surprised with the little things happening in the game world. The fact that there are game magazines that publish articles, conferences announcing new consoles, and even game award shows in this little pixel world with little pixel people was very cute. I think that's one of the strong suits of the game. There's always something going on in your screen, and something you could be doing, even though at times I felt like I didn't know what that was supposed to be. Even though the game is also available on Steam, the mobile version plays really well, so you can play it from your couch, your bed, in the office when you're supposed to be working, wherever you want. Plus, a ton of Kairosoft's other games are also available on Play Pass, so if you really like their games, you can go wild and give them all a try. I really wanted to love this game, but I wasn't able to compel myself to keep going. Honestly, if you have any theories on why I didn't like the game, while so many other people did, do let me know in the comments. I'm really interested to know, because I hate feeling like I have a blind spot on understanding what makes games fun for people. Maybe after that, I'll revisit the game with a new perspective, but for now, I can't really recommend it. In Dead Cells, you play as a mysterious character who has died, but finds themselves perpetually alive again, forever coming back to life whenever they are killed. Your objective is to explore the dungeon, pick up weapons and upgrades, take down enemies that sometimes drop the namesake cells, and get more powerful, particularly by trading those cells for upgrades. Every time you die, you lose all your items, but the upgrades you earn from spending your cells are retained, so theoretically you'll get stronger and stronger each run, and eventually be able to move further into the game and take down tougher enemies. Sounds like that would get boring, but the map changes every time you respawn, and there are a variety of weapons for you to find and choose from, keeping things fresh between attempts. What I've just described is what people mean when they say a game is a roguelike or a roguelite. I don't think I'm qualified to speak on which one Dead Cells is, because there seem to be nuances even people making videos on the topic can't agree on. But the characteristics that are important in our context are that the levels are procedurally generated and that you should expect to die. A lot. Like Cultist Simulator, where you should also expect to die again and again, and not take it too hard. The key difference is that your survival is more combat focused. Some designers describe challenges in games as either heads, things that test a player's thinking, or hands, things that test your reaction and physical execution. Though you do yourself some good to get familiar with the enemy's attack patterns, and there may be some strategy around what upgrades you should choose, I'd say Dead Cells is pretty deep in the hands camp. And it's not only enemies that are trying to kill you, there are traps too, and healing items are few and far between. Though some people debate whether or not Dead Cells is truly challenging, because theoretically you'll get stronger as long as you keep getting upgrades, at the very least I can say it's demanding. So if you're not used to action-oriented games that require time in your movements, maybe this shouldn't be your masochistic start. Let's say that sounds like the kind of thing you like, or you're open to a new challenge. You download the game, you kill some enemies, you die, then... you lost cells. What are cells? There isn't really much of a tutorial in the mobile version of the game. They kinda just throw you in and expect you to figure things out. Some of them were pretty intuitive, jumping, rolling, attacking, since there are dedicated buttons for those, but there were other mechanics that completely flew over my head. Maybe if I had experience playing roguelikes before, I'd know better, but my first few rounds, I didn't understand that I should be spending my cells, and that I'd be able to keep the upgrades from that between deaths. There were also these mysterious looking doors with timers on them, which I still don't know what they do or where they lead, but at the time I was too afraid to open them since I'd just finished getting my ass whooped by the enemies out front. So I chose to go elsewhere and got wiped out almost immediately there instead. All that is to say that I'm used to having NPCs hold my hand, so I needed to search online to help me figure out what was going on, which you might or might not need to do too. I was kind of expecting the game to be hard to play on mobile, but to my surprise, the port is pretty good. The visuals aren't too small, it looks like the UI has been adjusted, and the controls are pretty smooth, though I did find myself crouching by accident from time to time. You can get it on Steam for roughly $10, but I kind of enjoy being able to play from wherever I am, and it feels less stressful dying all the time while I chill on my couch instead of hunched over super seriously in front of my computer. If you do want to get it on Steam though, I suggest you put it on your wishlist, as I do see it going on sale quite often. On Google Play without the pass, it's roughly $3.50 when I convert from my currency, so if this is the only game you want to play from the pass, then I'd say just get it as a standalone purchase. But if there are other games that you want to try, or you're not confident you'll like this genre, then getting it on the pass is a safe bet. Plus, you can play it alongside some other Play Pass games for when you need a break from the action. Overall, if I was speaking to a friend who likes action games that are somewhat challenging, but has no experience with roguelikes or roguelites, I'd recommend they try Dead Cells to experience the genre. If I was speaking to a fan of roguelikes or roguelites, then I wouldn't even bring it up, because they probably know the game and have played it already. Personally, I won't be continuing to the end, because I'm not a glutton for punishment, but I'm happy to have experienced it and know what this genre of games is about. Last but not least, Bad in Theater is a unique visual novel, where the goal of the game is to unlock all of the endings, of which all are, well, bad. Bad as in not a happy ending. To do this, you'll have to toggle between the different traits of your cast, as one actor's actions will affect the flow of everyone's story. For example, here we have 4 characters, a hero, a damsel, a tyrant, and her underling. If you decide to make the hero diplomatic, they'll choose to talk to the tyrant instead of storming their castle. Each run of the story is relatively short, but there are so many combinations and moving pieces that drastically change what happens in each run. I was honestly surprised. Just when I thought I had the plotline figured out, the story would take a whole different turn. The game is illustrated in a cute pixel style, with most of the story beats having their own unique drawings, which really adds a lot of personality to the characters and keeps things visually interesting alongside the narrative. If you like visual novels, great, you're probably already 90% of the way there to liking this game. But visual novels are a tricky genre, and I've definitely heard people debate whether or not they are even considered games at all. So for the non-visual novel enjoyers, I'll try to explain some of the appeal briefly. Though there are some static visual novels, wherein you don't make any choices, or even if you do, there's only one ending, much like a traditional book. I think most people find visual novels appealing because they like to have influence over the story. Scratch that itch of, well, what if the character did that? Couldn't they have done this? Hence, you'll find that a lot of visual novels will give you choices that accumulate into a good, normal, or bad ending. Maybe a perfect ending too if they're feeling spicy. Bad End Theater takes this concept to another level, letting you make a ton of choices, and then says, here's more than 40 endings. Enjoy! Putting your influence on the story front and center. So Bad End Theater is also available on Steam for roughly the same price as what it's listed for on mobile, which is roughly $4.50 US if you're curious. Unsurprisingly, the mobile version plays perfectly well, so there aren't any technical restrictions to consider. Personally, if you're getting the Play Pass anyway, I'd just play it on mobile. I do recommend that you play all of it in 1 or 2 sittings, or else you might forget the different combinations you've tried. You could get around that if you're willing to take notes somewhere, but you should be able to get through all of the endings in a weekend, so it's pretty good value for money getting it as part of the pass. The only thing that's making me consider getting the Steam version are the Steam achievement icons, because they're so cute, but that's just me. I think Bad End Theater is a really good game, and is super unique. But because it's unique, I understand it might not be as popular among my friends as games like Stardew Valley or Dead Cells, but it's a good game and has its audience. So if what you've heard sounds like something you'd enjoy, I'd strongly encourage you to check it out. And if you've never played a visual novel and have the Play Pass, then maybe this is a good chance to try something new. Finally, we've reached the end. I've summarized all my thoughts here in this nifty diagram. Whether or not you pick up any of these games, I hope you at least found this video informative, or dare I say, entertaining. This is the first video I've ever made, so the scripting and the editing is probably pretty shoddy, but I hope I was able to get my thoughts across, and my sincere thanks for watching. It's been a long time since I've been surrounded by people that would willingly listen to me ramble on about games, so making this video has been really fun. That's all. I hope you all have a great day and or night, and maybe I'll see you in another one of these videos.